This micro-credential deals with plant propagation and consists of 5 targeted skills. This targeted skill addresses asexual propagation methods. There are several methods for asexual plant propagation. Probably the most well-known and frequently used method is the use of cuttings. Cuttings involve rooting a severed piece of the parent plant. The 2 major types are stem cuttings and leaf cuttings. With a stem cutting, a section of stem 2 to 6 inches in length with 2 or 3 leaves is cut from the parent plant. An example is when a pathos stem is placed in water with indirect light for a few weeks. When it develops new roots, it can be transplanted into a pot of soil. With some plants, instead of placing a cut stem in water, it can be placed directly in soil. However, a powdered root hormone is often applied to the cut end to promote quicker root development before placing it in the soil. With leaf cuttings, a single leaf is needed to sprout a new plant. It's a fairly common procedure for indoor plants, like a jade plant. New baby plants with roots can form on the cut edges of the leaves. Another type of asexual propagation is the dividing method, frequently used with landscape plants that have multiple stems emerging from the ground. The parent plant is dug up and divided into smaller portions. A hosta plant is easy to divide, along with mums, ornamental grasses, and many perennial flowers that come back year after year. Simple layering is another type of asexual propagation effective for some plants, such as a blackberry plant. A branch is pulled down to the ground, covered with soil, and left until it develops roots. Later, it can be cut and moved to a new location. Another type of layering is called air layering. A healthy stem is split and filled with wet sphagnum moss for some protection and to retain moisture. Eventually, new roots develop and pop out through the moss. It is then ready to be removed and transplanted. An example is using a ficus branch to produce a new tree. Grafting is another type of asexual propagation in which part of 1 or 2 stems of one parent plant are removed and attached to the stem or root of another plant. The 2 plants will eventually become united as one plant. Grafting is primarily used for woody plants and most tree fruits. An interesting example is when 2 or 3 stems of different colored flowering hibiscus are grafted and grown on one rootstock. The result can be quite amazing. Sometimes grafting is used to control the size of certain trees. An example is this bonsai tree in which a Japanese maple top was grafted onto a different tree on the bottom. Bud grafting is similar to grafting, but only the bud is removed from the parent plant. The bark of another plant is sliced in a way that the bud can be inserted under it. The bud will grow and become permanently attached to the original plant, but will retain its own genetic characteristics. Common plant examples for bud grafting are roses and fruit trees. This explains how you might see 2 different types of apples on the same tree. A stolon, sometimes called a runner, is another form of asexual propagation. It is a shoot that grows along the ground to form a new plant at its tip, or just below the ground to produce roots and new plants as its nodes. An example is a strawberry plant. The runner can be cut and separated from the original plant. Many bulb-forming plants, such as crocuses, produce underground roots that create new plants around them. Stolons and runners occur naturally, but they can be separated from the original plant. This is a simple way to get more plants with common house plants, like a spider plant. In recent years, tissue culture propagation has been perfected to propagate plants asexually. Very small stem cuttings are sterilized and grown in test tubes under sterile conditions. Once roots are established, they can be forced to produce many stems. Tissue culturing helps to reproduce plants very rapidly. In general, the major advantage for asexual propagation methods is that it allows for production of many plants quickly with specific desired characteristics. However, a disadvantage is that the new plants come from only one parent. They are genetic clones, which may make them less hardy and more susceptible to plant diseases and pests.